I brought the line back to the kiln he said was cold. The alert blinked on our shared calendar at 9:02 a.m. Throwing night 6:30 10:30 centering plus trimming plus bisque load. I looked at it long enough to feel the phantom shove of clay under my palm, then the event vanished as if the day had coughed and pretended it hadn't promised anything. 2 minutes later, a text from Max. Studio's cold, kiln controllers out. I'll be home early, want me to grab doll? Read, I thumbed, yes. Set the phone face down on the museum lighting plot I kept pretending to finish, and tried not to rehearse the phrase centering is a verb inside my mouth. We've been together 7 years. Max changes careful crafts the way other people rotate playlists, bookbinding for a winter, bicycle wheels for a spring, and since last fall, ceramics at the community studio under the bridge where the river forgets to look busy. He comes home dusted with bone-dry clay and a patience I don't always own, his wrists chalked white, his voice rearranged into useful quiet. He says things I pocket because I want them to apply to more than clay. Stop fighting the wobble, water is not an apology, the line wants air. We had a plan that suited the Weather Doll, the dumb documentary series we refused to abandon bed until 5:11 p.m. when the studio posted a story. The kiln panel glowing again. A row of bats like patient planets, ribs and loop tools in their little tray, and a person I recognized from posture and salt and pepper even in silhouette Ari setting a slip cup down the way someone sets a violin. Overlay text. Controller REPLACED. Throw night is on. Bring patient hands. If they're open we could swing by to say hi. I tried, acting like I wasn't stepping onto thin ice I'd poured myself. For me it's off, Max said, not unkind, slicing an onion with the focus he uses when he's choosing not to argue with himself. I don't have good hands tonight. Which might have been about the wheel or about us. Got it, I told the cutting board. The part of me that calls itself prudence tied its boots wrong on purpose. At 6:12 I was standing in the studio lot composing the sort of administrative lie that comforts only the sender. Freight landed early, running to sign, I typed. He sent a thumbs up. Reasonable emoji deserve better men. Inside, the air had the damp mineral breath of rooms where mud decides to be history. The line of wheels sat like a choir that had already tuned. A wire rack wore a city of bowls in various stages of optimism. The glazed corner looked like a shy kindergarten. Somebody had taped 2 signs above the mop sink. Don't punish clay for telling the truth and stop adding water to fix loneliness. Max arrived at 6:26 with his tote, the line WANTS air, and he wasn't alone. He walked with Ari the way people walk with someone who knows where the step is, the practiced half-body of space that isn't flirting until it matters that it is. He saw me and did that 2-heartbeat step back, his small sabirolo of hesitation, then put a smile between us like a coaster. Tonight is ordinary, said Nina, the coordinator, clapping once. Centering, a short trimming demo, then we'll load bisque until the kiln refuses. Rules. Water is a lubricant, not a confession. Ribs are kindness, stop fighting the wobble. And if you need to gossip, not near the reclaim. If you need to sneeze, not near the reclaim. The room's laugh sounded like relief that someone else had announced gravity. I followed Max with my eyes. He slapped a lump of wedged clay down, not the punishing slap, the respectful one, centered like a person who had forgiven 3 things then forgotten they were forgiven, and pulled a wall up in 2 steady breaths. Ari passed him a rib, then stepped back, then did nothing, because sometimes the best help is leaving a gesture alone. Jealousy rose the way it always does, a badly trained dog I keep trying to adopt out. I gave it a job. I wedged reclaim for a high schooler who wanted to start over without calling it failure. I fetched a sponge for a woman who believed in rinsing too much. I laid out bats like invitations. Trimming at 6:35, Nina called, and the room drifted to the demo wheel the way birds drift to a wire. Max turned one of his bowls over onto a bat, soft leather hard, not a diva, tapped 3 times with the wooden tool until the center admitted it, and started trimming in quiet circles that made a song out of subtraction. Ari leaned in just enough to watch the line he wasn't drawing. Nina said, "Listen for the difference between a shaving and a criticism," and everyone pretended they already knew. At the break, paper cups of tea that had never met a standard, a tub of pretzels that tasted precisely like continuing. Max drifted toward me. "You came," he said without adding a knife. "I heard observation is already half alignment," I said, borrowing from another night. "Also, you lied. Your wrists are fine." "Controller's back," he said. He looked past my shoulder toward Ari and then back at my face. "And I wanted to be the version of me that learns without writing you a report. Also," he set the cup down, "it's not the worst thing to let someone else correct my pressure. He has certain hands." That phrase is small and lives forever. I opened the passport truth I had brought for this exact border. I was afraid you'd get used to a good job that wasn't mine. Max set his palm on the bat the way he sometimes sets it on our table when he wants to quiet more than furniture. "Stay," he said, "no theater, some mercy. But be a student. If Nina asks what centering is, don't say making it perfect. Say making the path available. Can you do that?" "I can try," I said, which is my yes with handrails. The second half began the way second halves should. Somebody gave me a tool I had not earned. "Want a wheel?" Nina asked, crooking a finger toward number 7. "We need ordinary breathing." She set a lump of clay, your basic bureaucracy, down in front of me, wet the wheel, and stepped back like a lifeguard who liked her job. "Wedge more if you need to. Stop before it announces you to the room. Elbows in. Press, don't plead." I did not embarrass the sink. The first try became a discus of apology. "You're pushing with your need to be right," Nina said, her voice built for field trips. "Try your legs." I tried my legs. The clay agreed to meet me in the middle like a grown-up. I pulled a cylinder that could become almost anything, which is the honest shape of hope. "Want a trim?" Ari asked, when my bowl and I were both pretending we had always been leather hard. He set a trimming tool in my hand like a teacher lending a small, dangerous truth. "Listen," he said, "not for praise, for the difference between friction and shaving." The tool sang a little. The foot found itself without my resume. The rim stopped apologizing for being round. Across the room, Max was letting a kid make a bad cylinder without interrupting. The kid learned anyway. It made me jealous, and it made me want to print a medal for Max that said "does not correct" when correcting would feed the wrong god. "Quick exercise," Nina called after the kiln had swallowed the first shelf of greenware like a reasonable horizon. She used the tone of a person who has taught kindergarten and graduate school and respects both. "On a scrap of newsprint or on your phone, write one sentence for tomorrow. Not about clay, about you. It has to describe you without nomming you." She didn't collect them. We had already lived enough to know what to do with secrets. Max wrote, "Don't tighten me so much, I open by myself." Ari wrote, small and neat. "I prepare the air," I wrote. "I am learning to make the path available without proving I know the way." A woman who had oversponged everything wrote, "I can stop when the line is breathing." The high schooler wrote, "I can start over without setting myself on fire." Nina nodded as if we had placed our bowls on a shelf she trusted. We loaded the last of the bisque like people who have decided not to pray and are doing the work anyway. Max slid one of my cylinders in the back with the same honesty he uses when he hangs a towel at home. He did not fix its wobble. which is the kind of love I recognize even when I want the other kind. Outside, the bridge let the river be a river. You lied, Max said, without a weapon. Poorly, I said. I could have said I was scared, that your knight might have a life that doesn't need me. Tell me about Ari without poetry. He proposes and then steps out, Max said, zipping his jacket. He doesn't collect debts. Stepping out, I repeated, because the phrase wanted to be cinnamon in my mouth. Max took my hand in his pocket, which is how he keeps me warm when I'm pretending I'm fine. At home, we set 3 things on the table, our sentences and a scrap where Nina had drawn a cylinder becoming a bowl with "breathe" here scrawled at the rim. Let's write a house service sheet, I said. 5 lines, a staff. We don't have to sing in tune. Max found a pen we didn't hate. We wrote. If the calendar blinks, we talk. We don't let the studio decide our honesty. If a place outside makes us more alive, we show the other the door and say where the tea is and where the reclaim is not. Jealous means look closer, not hunt a fault. If one of us climbs onto his mezzanine, the other puts a tool in his hand, a rib, a phrase, a wire, and a time to breathe. Once a week we hang something that breathes, image, label, sentence, without explaining it until we read it out loud together. In the weeks after, I learned the difference between water that helps and water that begs. I learned to stop chasing a wobble as if it were a thief and start listening to it like a neighbor. I learned to center with my legs and my patience. Ari showed me how to trim without writing an alibi on the foot. Nina taught me that reclaim is mercy, not shame. Max loaned me his useful silence, the kind that keeps my hands from apologizing when what they need to do is adjust. I don't pretend clay can fix what sentences break. We weren't broken, just poorly tempered. Rims too tight, proofs too long, compassion pointed at the wrong God. The wheel taught me to wait. The kiln taught me to leave the room and trust the door. The line taught me that justify, a word from the museum, belongs to pages more than apologies. Give the space that lets the curve hold. Last night Max slid our sentences under the magnet strip above the sink. Across from them I taped a photo Ari had taken of the kiln panel glowing a quiet sea on, the shelf peeking through like a skyline. The dog, the hyphen between us, walked through the kitchen like a professional separator of lines. We left the window open. March leaned in with a yes. Silence while the kiln thinks, Max said, grinning. Standing by, I said. Summary minus the sermon. Don't confuse pressure with proof. Water is already help. Jealousy behaves when you give it a job. Stepping out is not abandonment. Making the path available is not domination. And the same bowl, offered by different hands, doesn't tell one story but stories that hold each other up. Tonight the calendar's box is actually white. That means dull, nothing compulsory, try again tomorrow. Max rinses the ribs, I fold the towel. The dog checks the table legs like a repair person who knows when things are fine. Between the scrap and the photo I stick a small label, here we make the path available without proving it. Max adds another, here we say thank you. The kitchen breathes like a small studio learning to be home. I don't tighten the ending. I let it dry, then hold. That's enough.